Welcome to Smacky's Garage. Today we're going to be working on attaching this body here to the chassis on the Factory 5 GTM. Now if you've been following along, last episode 1 of the bodywork, we actually got this body on this chassis. Today we're going to be going on to the next step and we're going to get this chassis securely mounted. We're going to get the exhaust to the back and one step closer to getting this car on the road. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work through cutting out the exhaust holes in the back because this fiberglass chassis doesn't have exhaust holes in it. They need to be custom cut to fit. Then we need to go ahead and find a way to actually mount this body securely to the chassis. The instructions really aren't that straightforward. We're going to try to work through a few different ways to mount the car, and after that we'll be golden. Now I do expect this to be a lot more difficult than it sounds. I'm probably going to have to do some fabrication of some custom brackets to mount this body to the chassis, but we shall see. So let's go ahead, let's start by cutting out the exhaust on the rear of the car. All right, so right now we got to cut the holes for these. So I'm going to cut one on either side using the body saw that I just purchased. It looks like it should be pretty straightforward. Just need to make sure I don't breathe in any fiberglass. For a rough cut doing that by hand, that didn't come out too bad. So I need to buy a special body sander to be able to sand that smooth and get it perfectly lined up. So that's one of the next things I'm going to do, but overall looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the exhaust on. All right, so the holes came out pretty good on either side. So I have the body file, the half-inch belt sander coming. It should be here later this week, and I'll be able to take that and kind of clean those up. But the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to align this body onto the chassis itself. Now, if you look at the exhaust right now, it's not perfectly lined up. And if you look at the center, you know, it's not lined up there either. So what we need to do is we actually need to shift the body to make it fit. So to do this, we're gonna end up jacking the car up, taking the wheels off. We're going to take some measurements from essentially that wheel well to the internal chassis, that wheel well to the internal chassis, and then making sure that everything is equal on both sides. That should make it so that these are lined up. I do see these two holes here that could be used for mounting, but I don't actually believe the rivets are on the other side, or the holes are on the other side to mount to. So I believe those have to be made to make it centered. So here we go, we're going to get the car up in the air. So I have to take off both the wheels, so one on this side, one on the other side. Now we should be able to take some measurements off it. You know, the car is so stiff, so it probably doesn't need to be perfectly level, but I have everything up in the air now, and I should be able to take these wheels off and then start aligning the back. All right, so I essentially need to take measurements from the inner chassis in there, all the way to this body panel, and make sure it's equal on both sides. I'm not gonna be able to do this on camera. It's about 20 1/4 there. We end up being about the same here. All right, so I'm moving all this all around. I have the car up on jack stands underneath, and the easiest way to get this in place and hold it in place is it needs to lift up. So I'm using a jack to essentially lift up some wood, which is lifting up in the body, which is lining those up to the right height. So I'm gonna need to drill these into the chassis. Now, before I do that, I need to make sure everything's lined up. I'm gonna do one last measurement check, and I'm gonna go ahead and drill it in. Looking at how this is installed, it's installed incorrectly. So these aren't supposed to go directly into the transaxle mount. They're supposed to go somewhere else. The instruction actually doesn't say where they go. And researching a lot of the forums, I'm seeing that a lot of people use a 1-inch angle iron, bond it to the body, and then bolt it to the transaxle mount. So I'm gonna have to do that. Also, they use this bracket, or a lot of people have an upgraded bracket, for the mount for the trunk latch. So we need to get this installed too. So this is coming back apart, getting everything lined up again, and then trying to bolt it back into place. Now I have to say, if you like taking things apart over and over again and trying to figure out how everything goes together, kit car is for you. Okay, so to line this up, I decided to take the trunk lid from the other garage and put it on the car. It still needs to be cleaned up. And the first thing I'm seeing is it's not going to fit well, so it looks like this got bowed over time. So that's something I'm going to need to deal with. And it looks like the latch is kind of in the right location, so I'm close to where I want to be. So getting that, I'm going to look up underneath, make sure it's all set, but if it's good, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to screw that down. Now, doing some more research on this, I found a lot of people don't use the latches on the engine compartments on these cars because they're no good. So I've decided to replace the engine compartment latch on this car. A lot of people replace them with either Corvette ones, or they say the 88 to 91 Honda Civic latch works. So I bought probably what is the only one left right now that's for sale off eBay. Should be here later in the week, so I can use that to kind of pull this together and hopefully pull this trunk lid or engine compartment lid back into shape, because as you can see, it's not fitting great right now, but I'm sure some body work needs to be done to it to make everything fit better. You can kind of see it up there. It looks so good. Okay, now to see how much everything flexes when I take it off. Now, if I look at this side, let me take this off too. All right, so obviously just using this bracket isn't gonna hold it up. See the brackets start to bend, which is great. This is definitely me improvising on how this is coming together. So by having a L bracket here, it'll give me a lot more support for the lower part of the body. That's what it really needs. These rivets really, they're used up in the front, but I don't feel comfortable having them back here doing all the support. So for now, these are holding it in till that L bracket comes tomorrow. Then we'll get that piece in and they'll support it. So the L bracket is now in place. It's being held together just by 2 screws. Now I plan on making 2 holes on the other side of the L bracket and then drilling directly through the fiberglass body to locate where it's going to be connected to the chassis. Now both of these screws that are going to be here are going to be hidden behind the license plate bracket, so they're not going to be visible when the plate is on the car. All right, one final look to make sure everything's lined up. So the exhaust looks like it's in good position. They look like they're about equally spaced. Still some work to do there to make everything line up perfectly. Everything is now secured into place so that I can drill that hole and that hole to put the final 2 bolts outside, and they'll end up probably about here. So on the other side of the license plate bracket, with them there, they won't be visible as long as I use the right type of screws, so some sort of button head screw. All right, so now it's time to remove all this fixturing, hoping it stays in place better than it did before. There we go, that is so much better. All right, so the fixturing held it really well. So back here you can see the bracket that we put on. So we have the bracket down there, the 2 screws that are directly through bolted, that angle bracket or that angle iron. Then we have the 2 that go all the way through the chassis of the vehicle. And then these are, I have to see if there's gonna be enough room in here for these to exist with the trunk lid. Looking at the trunk lid itself, seems like I should be good, but we'll find out when I put that on. That'll be one of the next steps. But it's looking like everything is lining up. Everything seems to be pretty sturdy, so everything is looking pretty good right now. So one of the big next steps is to get the car on the ground and see how it looks. So I feel like everything turned out pretty good when we look at the car and how everything came together. You know, it was a little bit frustrating to try to get it mounted the first time because, you know, the instructions weren't as straightforward as you would think. But now that everything's mounted, it's mounted securely, and I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. Now, there's some more work that I have to do around each one of these exhaust holes to sand them. I ended up buying parts or tools from Auto Body Tool Mart that's going to be coming in the mail in the next week, so I'll finally have some good sanding blocks as well as sandpaper that I can use for fiberglass. I've never actually worked with fiberglass on a car before, or sanded fiberglass. All I know is it really itches when you get the dust on these, so we're gonna make sure that we don't do that and we wear the right PPE. So now that this is fully on, I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna take care of this, and then we need to figure out how this trunk lid is gonna go onto the car. So there's still some small things to sort out with the engine on this. I was able to get it back into the garage, but still leaking a little bit of coolant, so I'm actually gonna end up removing that front coolant tank that's all the way up there because it's not really needed since I have the one back here in the engine bay. So we're gonna make that change. There's also a lot of cleanup that I need to do of the wiring of the car because if you look at in the front by the steering wheel and everything is a mess and it's pretty much impossible to drive safely at all because of the wiring there. So I need to get that cleared out. I need to get the taillights hooked back up, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna have to make something custom for the brake switch because I don't have anything that works and we don't have a brake switch for this right now. So need to get that done too. So thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of working on the body of this Factory 5 GTM.